When you're in Canberra in Parliament, here I was advocating for nationwide electrification to help save people money, and then I run into Electrify Canberra, who's going to electrify apartments and help us figure out how to solve one of the hardest problems in electrification and climate solutions, which is how do you solve it for renters, how do you solve it for all classes of housing in Australia. So I'm really stoked that you're doing this thing tonight.
Excited. Thanks, all.
I think we're ready to start. If everyone could find a seat. And we might start, I'd like to introduce to you one of the wonderful volunteers behind Electrify Canberra, who is also going to welcome us to country tonight, Amy Blaine.
Yuma. Dawa, Nuna, Dawa Nunawal. Yangu, Nalamanyan, Dunamanyan. Nunawalwari, Dawrawari, Dindi, Wangaralijinyin. This is Ngunnawal country. Today we are all meeting together on Ngunnawal country. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the elders.
Thank you so much, Amy. And welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's so wonderful to see Electrification get an almost full house in the wonderful National Film and Sound Archive. Thank you. Yeah, a big round of applause. I mean, I'd like to welcome tonight Minister Rattenbury. Thank you for joining us tonight, and staff from the Chief Minister's office as well. Mark Parton, MLA. Hello, Mark. I think he is. There he is. Thank you very much. Commonwealth officers as well from the ACT and the federal governments here tonight. We've also got Senator Pocock. Hopefully he's got his time turner on and will join us after Senate estimates. And thank you all mostly, because you're the ones who are making the big switch. A few apologies to start, and they're mainly from me, because many years ago, way back in 2007, I did a television show called Carbon Cops, where I busted people for excessive energy use. And what the thing was is we said, you've got to GOG, you've got to get on gas. You remember that? A third of the emissions, electricity was nasty stuff because it was all brown coal, black coal. GOG, get on gas. So I have an apology to make. Not that you all switched, but I think that's one apology I'd like to make. And the other one is that shame that I think we have now, which is when you hit the tick, 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 and the little gas fire sets under your little pot of soup. There's a little bit of shame, isn't there? Just a little bit of shame. So but I am on gas still and transitioning like probably we're all trying to. But the thing is that I have got an electric heated throw rug and an electric toasted sandwich maker, which is pretty much, I use that for all my cooking now. It's amazing what you can cook on a toasted sandwich maker. Eggs mainly, pikelets, living on pikelets. And I've got to admit, looking here at this panel, we have assembled the world's largest panel of experts, which is supreme. And really, the quality of knowledge and expertise in Canberra that we've got here today is absolutely fantastic. So before we hear from each of them and your questions that you've submitted, just want to get a little sense of who's here tonight. Can we get a little bit of a whoop or a hands up? Whoop. I think a whoop. It's that sort of night. Apartment owners. Who lives in an apartment? Yeah, it's hard to judge, isn't it? Maybe a show of hands, but I think the whooping mechanism works. And who, if you own your apartment, that's the whoop. What about apartment renters? The whooping technology is working there. Yeah. Okay. On an executive committee as part of your... They're not whoopers, those ones. Yep, okay. I can see you've worn down. What about working in Strata? Oh, thank you, one. From an industry association relating to building apartments? Yep, thank you. And anyone living in a penthouse apartment? No, good, because we've got it. Right, I think we've established the quality of the audience tonight, team. So let's get started. Before we really kick off, I think tonight I want to thank the Electrify Canberra volunteers. They're absolutely amazing. To drive this is extraordinary. And I am wearing the merch, $40 well spent. And you too can look this good. And there's tote bags, there's stickers that you get for free. And just jump on board that, because that's the way they fund this baby. So the people plugged in and generating, I reckon they could have their own feed-in tariff, is Amy, Sarah and Mel. Can I invite you all up to just say a few words?
Hello there. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming tonight. We really appreciate that you've made an effort to head out and talk about electrifying apartments. When we first decided that this was something that we should sensibly do, and Mel did the tickets, and about a week in I said, Mel, great, how many tickets have we sold? She had a look, she goes, 0. So we did panic ever so slightly, but we thought it's okay, we've got such a good panel, they'll have a fabulous conversation amongst themselves, and we'll record it and everyone can watch it afterwards. But thank you for saving us from the indignity of 0. So the only 0 we're talking about is apartment 0, and that's 0 emissions. So again, yes, as Lisha said, we're so fortunate to have such a fantastic crew of volunteers. We've got Amy and Mel, powerhouses of this group. We're all volunteers. We've got James doing the photos, Julie, now I'm going to miss names, Mike, Bobby, our campaign electrician. We've got Yuan, who does some fantastic work. So we're really fortunate, and there's many, many more. So I urge you to come join us. We're a really lovely group of people, and we do cool things like this. Quick background, we've been together for about 18 months, slightly over. We've been advocating for electrification in Canberra. We've had loads and loads of political meetings, including with Minister Rattenbury. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. We've actually had a surprising amount of interest and engagement, and we're pretty confident that we're going to see increasing electrification. We're so fortunate that we're in a city that's totally committed to net zero by 2045. And I reckon we can probably get there a bit quicker. What do you reckon? Let's do it. So our capacity to influence decision makers really turns on our numbers. We're so fortunate to have large numbers, and we'd like to be larger. So encourage you, after the end of the event, we'll have some, I think we've got a room to break out into. You'll get the chance to speak to panellists further and ask the questions inevitably we won't get to tonight. Come have a chat, sign up. We'd love you to complete the survey that's on our website. Short, only goes to us. We're over 1,500. That's a really great signal to decision makers that people in Canberra want this. We also, Saul, our patron saint, we're also a member of Rewiring Australia and part of that national network of people and communities committed to electrification. I'd also like to just give a great shout out to this venue who've been fantastic to deal with, the fabulous Scottish Stephen on the mics, and I really commend this venue if you are looking to do something yourself. And I'd also I just appreciate in this space, we're volunteers, we know how hard that is. And I understand for those on executive committees, it's a bit of a thankless task. So I'd also like to thank those particularly who are here tonight. You're unpaid. You make everyone cranky. You don't really get much for it. And, you know, there's enormous obligations upon you. So what we hope is that some of the information here tonight will be useful for you. I think too, it's a space, we're all here because we want to do the right thing. We want to reduce emissions, we'd like to save money, and this is the way to do it. We're fortunate, we've found our dealings with ACT government and bureaucracy have actually been exceptional. I know it's a thankless space sometimes. I'd particularly like to thank Kieran Lawton here, who's helped this event come together and provided a little bit of funding for that, and has just been fantastic about wanting to know community concerns and how to make programs better. So big shout out there as well too. So thanks very much. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our expert panel.
Thank you, Sarah. And that's Sarah Reid, Mel Gregory and Amy Blaine, who are they're the coordinators of Electrify Canberra and Apartment Zero. Now, onto this. You'll notice that you've got a little flyer there with a QR code on it. And if you scan the QR code, you can submit a question. But we've got a whole list of questions that we've triaged and condensed so that we can get through all of the questions so far. So enough gas bagging from me. Well, not bagging. We're exploring, but gas bagging, banging on. So I'd like to introduce my wonderful panel. Now, I've got a complicated setup here of who's where and scanning it, beaming it in from satellite. So we'll start on the far end here. I'd like to introduce, and we'll go around and have maybe 2 minutes of just an introduction each. Is that all right? And if you go on too long, I'll make you walk the plank. Starting in position number 1, Neil Lacane. Neil is an Owners Corporation chair. He has a real success story for us tonight regarding installing EV chargers. So, Neil, can you just give us your quick rundown? 1 to 2 minutes.
Yes, certainly. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming along. I spent 40 years as a... hold it more to... Is that better? Okay. I spent really my career in the construction business, first of all as a chartered engineer, and then as an executive project manager, constructing buildings for various departments and corporations right around Australia. And I really loved my job. I used to say, I loved it so much I'd do it for nothing. Be careful what you wish for. The Owners Corporation is very much like that. But anyway, I was Owners Corporation chair for 5 years, and we did a $2.5 million cladding replacement program during that time, and a $200,000 universal EV charging infrastructure installation as well. And so I'm pretty happy with that part of my retirement.
Perfect. Textbook. Thanks, Neil. Now, next on our panel is Robin Eckerman, a member of the Owners Corporation network, who got his building to install solar, which is incredible, and some EV charging as well.
Thanks, Leash. Yes, I had a career in IT and telecommunications. Some of you, I hope, are on Transact's network. That was my baby. I look on that now like a grandfather looks on a grandchild, and I think sometimes that kid's on drugs, but I still love it. So we retired into an apartment, well, semi-retired. I don't think I've ever been busier since retiring. A couple of years ago, and I ended up chairing the executive committee for the first 2 years, and Gary's conscripted me into the Owners Corporation network. So at the risk of exceeding my 2 minutes, who's read Animal Farm? George Orwell, quite a few. So, Leash, in the spirit of the pigs who changed the chant from 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, subtly to 4 legs good, 2 legs better, you just need to change GOG to get off gas.
Yeah, it's the same. Good, thank you. I was on it all along. Next on our panel is Kieran Lawton. Kieran is the Senior Executive Branch Manager at ACT Government. Fire away, Kieran.
Okay, thanks, Liz. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm still in my career. I'm looking forward to it coming to a close. So I'm with the Office of Climate Action, but there's a whole lot of work going on across the ACT government to help apartments electrify, and hopefully I'll get to talk to some of that tonight. But what I would say straight up is that one of the roles of the ACT government has been to set clear targets so we know where we're heading, and so that businesses and households can plan ahead. And I guess we've said we've got a net zero target at 2045, and we're turning off the gas network at 2045. So our message is for Canberrans to make their next choice electric at the end of their appliance or vehicle life. And we've got time. So that would be my message for tonight, that we've got time to plan ahead and think about this. And I guess the other key role for government in this space is to support those who need it most, recognising that there are those in the community that can't afford to make the change themselves, and so we've provided a bunch of support for them, and hopefully I'll get to explain some of that. Also, we've got quite a brains trust from the ACT government here tonight. I was going to introduce them, but then I saw the colleagues keep coming in, so I might throw to some people in the audience tonight.
Thank you for appreciating my virtual electric cattle prod there. I think the appliance thing, the end of life, so many friends have said, I'm just waiting for it to cark it, but it never seems to cark it. I reckon 2045 we'll still be seeing a lot of them running. Number 4 on our panel tonight. Susan Proctor, a lawyer with a deep expertise in strata, and she is going to bring that tonight. Susan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me tonight. I hope I don't have to get the Unit Title Management Act out because I'm sure all of you that sit on owners' corporations are very familiar with it. But there are some amazing elements to the legislation that can be leveraged to assist in introducing EV charging systems, alternate levy methodology adjustments, and EV class, so that there are ways to use our legislation to facilitate change within your owners' corporation. So hopefully we can explore some of that tonight.
Thanks, Susan. Next, David Cooper, man on the tools, because he is the plumber here, gets you in hot water, fixes, changes you over, arrives on time, every time. Thanks, David.
Hello, everyone. So, I'm a last-minute fill-in. Only worked out a few hours ago that I'd be here. So my background, basically a plumber, work in construction industry mainly. Over the last 15 years, though, I've been pretty heavily involved with hot water, solar hot water, and heat pumps. And I'll see if I can answer some questions on converting apartment complexes to heat pump hot water.
Yeah. Michael Grady. Michael, thanks for joining us, Director of a well-respected local strata company and a member of REACT chapter here in the ACT.
Thank you. So we're really on the coalface, like executive committee members, trying to address the electrification problem that faces apartment complexes at the ACT. And for those of you, there's a number of committee members of buildings we manage actually in the audience, which is good to see. But we find that we're often getting different pushes for different electrification programs throughout those buildings, and we really want to help the community understand how they can move forward in a well-considered way, and obviously try and push government to provide some support as to how buildings can actually achieve the electrification goals. So certainly willing to help provide community assistance in that regard.
Will's doing really interesting things. Will Anstey is a Loom director. Will, tell us what a Loom is.
Yeah, so a Loom, in a short nutshell, we're quite a successful now Australian manufacturer in the renewable space. I don't think there's many companies in that sort of realm. But in short, we bring shared solar to apartments. So basically taking traditional shared or traditional solar in homes, bringing it to apartments and doing it in a much smarter way, which is very exciting, very fun to work in. I guess the company itself was sort of built off social housing and providing equity of opportunity to everyone within the community. So sort of with that foundation, we've come to the apartment market. But sort of my background has always been the science space, a lot of restoration ecology background sort of thing, and have had experience working in the solar space, facilitating these projects with state government housing departments. So yeah, really excited to share any of my knowledge tonight and explore.
And this is the solar panel component right here. We've got Daniel Carson as well from Solar Choices.
Yeah, thanks, Leash. I'm here from Solar Choice, but my role is looking after EV charging partnerships. So between myself and Jeff, my boss, we sort of wear both of those hats. And my perspective on this panel is, I guess, really shaped by Solar Choice because it's where I spend most of my time working, which in the solar industry is a bit of an unusual position because we've been around for 16 years, which in solar years is a good couple of hundred in Australia. And we also come from an independent point of view because we don't sell hardware and we don't install things ourselves, which for us means that we can be independent advisors from beginning to end. And a lot of our energy goes into strata projects. And I was recently talking to someone else in the industry, and as soon as he said this to me, I thought, oh, I'm going to write this down. I'm going to mention it at this Electrify Canberra event because it really captures why what our organisation does in this space is so valuable. And this is a person who works at a company who manufactures EV charging equipment. And he said, strata buildings, that's the poisoned apple of our industry. And some of you are nodding along and you understand why. But that can't persist because people who live in strata buildings have been left out of the transition so far. And there are organisations and people and experts and services that can make that a lot easier, not to mention the technology that comes along with it. So that's where we sit in the mix, and hopefully that's some expertise I can provide tonight.
Thanks, Daniel. And finally, Mark Wilkins from Capital Claims. Now, Mark is the man who you'd probably have very intense conversations at parties, Mark, I think, because he is the full bottle on the financial benefits of depreciation. Now, I know that's niche. Mark, you're the man. You are on the right panel tonight.
Well, thanks, Leash. Yes, it is a very narrow lane that I'm operating in tonight. And with the calibre here of this panel, that's probably where I'll stay as well. So quite happy to help you guys in personally with any questions you have, possibly after this when we can talk in a bit more nuts and bolts around depreciation and the benefits for property owners. I've been working in this area for now 25 years and specifically working with apartment holders, commercial property owners and so forth. So there's questions out there. I've got all the answers. If it doesn't come up tonight, well, it probably doesn't need to be spoken of. So thank you.
Big round of applause for my wonderful guests. Like really, this has the potential to be the most boring night in the world. But you know what? It's not going to be because I've just heard these 9 people and I know it's going to be fabulous. So thank you all for giving so generously of your time and your expertise tonight. Now, we've asked you for your questions. So you've submitted your questions when you booked tonight and we have... I've got them all written down here, but there's also the QR code for a Slido question. So if you have a burning question during the evening, just scan that QR code, type in your question, and then we'll choose the top 3 questions. So you can vote if you like. You go, oh yeah, that's a good question. Vote for that. But if you have a better question, put it on there. And the best 3 questions or the most voted 3 questions will be asked at the end of the night. So you can do that as well. But to kick off tonight, I want to start with strata questions because this is where it all begins and it feels like that's where the tension so often starts. So this question is directed to Susan and Michael, our strata experts. The question, I'll start with you, Michael. Where does the owner's responsibility end and the owner's corporations begin?
So it's a fairly complex question. So when you look at an owner's responsibility for transition across solar panel installation, gas to electric hot water systems, and an electric vehicle charging infrastructure installation, a lot of times, at least in a large high-rise Class A building, that becomes quite complex because a lot of those systems will be shared, the rooftop will be shared, and there's a lot of fear of electric vehicle fires in large high-rise basements. So the owner's corporation, in my view, needs to be involved every step of the way in understanding what does the infrastructure design look like, what are the capacities of the building, what can the building structure handle, to provide the advice to each individual owner about what they might need to do on their own. But in a lot of circumstances, the owner's corporation as a whole is going to need to be the driver of these projects and help to drive change within apartment buildings. I don't think it's possible in at least the large high-rises that individual apartment owners will be able to do much on their own.
Because there's another question that says, what can I do in my apartment without having to get agreement of other owners? Is there anything they can do?
In this space, not in the large high-rise space, not
medium,
a lot.
Smaller,
no, within the smaller townhouse space, definitely.
Where does high-rise start?
So if you look at your multi-level, so if you look at something that starts from ground level only. So if you look at a townhouse, it's sort of ground level only or individual title. So your Class B complexes, for those of you who speak strata language, those type of apartment buildings will be able to do a lot of things on their own, just for the basis that they'll probably have an individual hot water system that's a gas-fired hot water system. They'll be able to change that over. Things like solar panels on their roof, they will probably own their roof. Probably advice from a lawyer might be worthwhile in terms of whether you own the roof or not. That will change across each individual unit. There's a whole bunch of things that can be done in those smaller single-level dwellings, Class B dwellings. But when you start looking at your Class A high-rises, it becomes a lot more an owner's corporation responsibility than anyone else.
And another question, can I put roof insulation and double glazing without approval from an executive committee? Is that another high-rise, low-rise?
Yes, so in a Class B complex, sure. But in a Class A complex where you're going to be changing what is probably common property to install insulation, so that roof space in between the roof sheeting and the plasterboard lining that is likely common property, or at the very least, you'll need assistance from the owners corporation to facilitate access to trades to get in that location to do so safely. So insulation will require approval, or at least some form of approval from the committee or the strata manager, or facilitation. And double glazing certainly will require approval from the owners corporation if you're looking at traditional retrofit double glazing, where you're taking out the old, putting in the new. If you're looking at a magnetite solution, which is a different form of double glazing, and effectively gets affixed on the inside of the glazing system, you may not require approval for that, and you probably won't.
Bubble wrap?
Bubble wrap's another good question.
Bubble wrap, double glazing, but I think you can, we'll sort that later. Susan, over to you now in the hot seat. Do I need a general meeting called for every upgrade I make? Ask this question. And is there a requirement for 100% agreement from owners before installing solar panels, batteries, EV chargers?
Yeah, so just following on from what Michael was saying, often the answer to such a question will depend upon the type of unit plan, so whether it's apartment type or townhouse type, whether or not any specific rules have been adopted by the unit plan. So they may have varied the standard default rules to allow for certain things to occur within common property that doesn't require approval. So the answer to that question is often determined by, it's bespoke to each unit plan that it impacts. Whether or not a general meeting is required to approve some additional alteration to common property is quite possible, and generally where there's a special privilege right required, if someone wishes to, for example, install an EV charger in their car park, they will need to penetrate through common property and access the common meter. So in order to do that, they'll require a special privilege right through that common property to run that infrastructure. And that requires an approval in general meeting by special resolution. Not unanimous, but special resolution.
So not 100%, you don't need 100%?
Never 100%.
That's good to know. Another one, Susan. Do owners' corporations need to develop specific bylaws to facilitate these changes in their building? And is there a template for these?
Yeah, I would say yes. All owners' corporations should consider adopting specific rules, they're called rules in the ACT, to facilitate if special privilege rights are going to be granted with respect to, say, an EV charger, then in order to be legally enforceable, it has to be enshrined in a rule. And a rule can only be adopted by owners in general meeting by special resolution. Are there templates? I've been working with a number of owners corporations, and we develop bespoke rules that address special privilege rights, and also the creation of potentially, this sounds a little bit Marxist, but potentially a separate class of unit owners that are the EV charge class, where they remain responsible for the costs and the maintenance obligations associated with the benefit that they're deriving from the special privilege. So that in order for any of that to be legally enforceable, it has to be registered, created as a rule and registered as a rule. So anyone that's buying into the unit plan can see it. It appears on the title and understands what benefits are there and where the obligation to maintain and repair that facility lies, who pays for that and who's responsible for that, and where's the insurance risk. So there aren't templates per se, because in order to create such rules, you've got to consider the building structure, the nature of the building, whether or not it's a benefit for that particular owner that doesn't cause a detriment to another owner. So there's a lot of considerations that need to be and thought put into the particular scenario in order to create the rule. There could be and should be, I think, assistance in some generic topics that should be covered off in these types of rules. So the insurance risk, the cost sharing, how to address appropriate charging facilities and options for using different providers in that category. Those sorts of things need to be looked at and could be worked with government and provided to owners, I think would be a good idea. But every project's going to require its own bespoke solution.
Yeah. This one, Michael, Susan, Robin or Neil, I think will bring in your expertise as well, Robin and Neil. As an apartment owner, not on an executive committee, what information should I give my committee and or strata manager to encourage them to consider electrification initiatives? And I know, Neil, you had great success with convincing people in your apartment. I'll just get you.
Years of work can be condensed into one sentence. Well, we were successful.
And I might get you, because these are all your questions, and they're fantastic questions. I'm literally reading what you've written. I might get you all to address is that all right? The fabulous audience. Thanks, Neil.
So would you like me to just quickly run through the process of getting owner agreement for the?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I joined the Owners Corporation Executive Committee in Space 2 in the AGM in the middle of 2018, and I had an agenda of things I was hoping to achieve, and top of the list was EV charging. And fortunately, the committee was agreeable, and by early 2019, we had a feasibility study completed, and we talked to our owners about that, and we circulated it as well by way of preparing the ground to our insurance broker, the fire brigade, the asset management company we had at the time, our owners, of course, and our lawyer, who happens to be sitting quite close to me. It was important before we progressed to make sure we had a foundation to work from. When we talked to our owners initially in 2019, there was no immediate pressure, but it was obvious that things were going to be happening in the years to come. And we talked to our owners about why we're doing this. And of course, I've always believed that if you want to effectively communicate with a Lithuanian, it's good to be able to speak Lithuanian. And so you've got to shape what you say to your audience and to your owners. And I'll run through the items that we discussed. Not all apply to everybody, but you get the idea. EVs really are the future. We really cannot stand in the way of that. Canberra is a small city in a large country in a larger world. We don't make cars, we take cars, and we're early adopters. And in Space 2, we have 150 car parks, and soon enough, those are going to start filling up with electric vehicles. At the moment, we've probably got about 25 EVs and growing all the time. So it's going to happen, and either we're prepared for it or we just get run over by the evolution. Of course, it's environmentally the right thing to do. Government policies are getting more and more involved with encouraging us to take up EVs, and we don't know what the future holds. So we just need to be cautious about not moving forward. It's a great investment, and it makes properties more valuable. Certainly, property prices in my block have been selling at record prices. Two-beddy down the corridor from me just sold for $965,000. Now, and I went to the auction, and the real estate agent made a point of saying that the whole building, and certainly that unit, had an EV charging capacity built in. And if you had an EV, it was a matter of just enrolling and you'd be straight on the system, which is correct. It's also easier to lease your property if you're a remote owner, if you have that facility. I also spoke to the two real estate agents about increase in value. Both of them were impressed at the cost, in our case, because of the strategy that we used, which I might talk about later, owners invested each about $3,000 to get baseline infrastructure to their car park. And then in the future, when they put on the wall box to actually charge, which they would own themselves, the infrastructure is community property. And Susan helped with definitions for all those things. So 5K total, that is an instantaneous gain in property value. Payback is instant.
Neil, lots of kickback because I think people are thinking, how did you get that across the line? I think you're one of a few apartments in the ACT.
Okay, well, yes, there was, particularly in our case, I'm not speaking universally, investor owners were not so enthusiastic by and large.
How did you convince them?
Well, it was a matter of just talking their language. It's a good investment. The value increases. It's easier to rent. If we don't do it, then increasingly we will become a relic in a fast evolving city. In fact, I would say EV charging, unless you plan to knock down your building in the next 15 to 20 years, you really have no choice but to embrace EV charging. And I could see at the end of the day that some of those investors were not absolutely overwhelmingly excited about it. We did get a unanimous vote for the several votes that we took associated with setting aside money and then accepting contracts and that sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I think if anyone has any more questions, put them on the slider, and also we'll have time after for a breakout.
Look, I'll finish now.
Sorry,
you want
Neil.
me to, but there's other
4 more
very
pages of
important
questions.
reasons. There's other very important reasons too, like fire safety. I think if you assume that it's going to happen either ad hoc or in a coordinated way. And if the executive committee runs it, then the fire brigade are on site, our insurance is happening, the whole building progresses in a coordinated and efficient and best value for money way. And owners understand that.
And hopefully we might get to the fire safety issue later down the track with EVs, because I think we haven't got an ESA person on the board today, but I think that's an issue that regularly comes up. Anything else to add on for that? I think we might keep moving. Is that all right? Can owners corporations block upgrades that promote sustainability? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any way to get around it?
I would say I would talk Lithuanian as well, because basically in order to progress anything you need to caucus, you need to get a groundswell, you need to get enough people on board to want to progress in that way, and that's how you get your community engaged. And that is the only way to make improvements within a community, and we're doing it piece by piece here, and you have to do that within the community that is within your unit plan. There is no, although there are provisions within the Act that say that an owner's corporation must not unreasonably withhold consent to installation of infrastructure, sustainability infrastructure, that can be altered, and that's not a mandatory requirement as part of the Act. Yeah.
Kieran, over to you now for government assistance and finances, because I think it's very telling that everyone here tonight is all owners, not a single renter, and I think there is always going to be this divide between renters and owners, and those that can afford and those that really will struggle. And we know how the savings to be made when you electrify are enormous, and so it does disadvantage people who can't afford to electrify. So what are some ways, and what government supports exist at the moment?
Thanks, Lish. Yeah, I guess our support is focused. We understand that there's challenges with apartments and they could be summarised as technical. Like every apartment has its own sort of unique problems, and so there's not one size fits all like we get with rooftop solar largely on standalone houses and other electrification. And then there's the coordination challenge that we've been talking about across owners corporations. And then, of course, there's a financial challenge. Electrification costs a lot up front, but the benefits come down the track. And so I'll talk to a couple of programs that we've got that are specifically aimed at apartments and to sort of help owners corporations break down those barriers. So the first one is Solar for Apartments. It's a relatively new program. It's a joint initiative with the Commonwealth, $3.6 million, and we're offering owners corporations up to $100,000 to put solar on their roofs, half grant, half loan. And because we understand that rooftop solar is like the gateway drug to electrification. It pays back fast, and then you've got virtually free electricity to use in your electrification journey. And one of the key things we wanted to do with that program was set up concessional loans for owners corporations. So we've established those now. So that brings that cost of finance down by providing those, in this case, interest-free loans. And there is a requirement there that the benefits go to renters as well as owners, and I'm sure we can chat about that more, and I'll stick up for the renters. We also have run a smaller pilot program on EV charging in apartments with tenant complexes, just to understand what the costs are. So we've just finished that process, and we've aligned with what Neil was saying. We've found between 3,000 and 8,000 to make an apartment complex EV ready. So doable and achievable, and we're going to support one or two of those complexes through to completion. The other thing that is more for the low rise is we have this flagship program, the Sustainable Household Scheme, which provides interest-free loans to owners, not to owners corporations. But we have had pretty reasonable uptake from apartments there. So that's for individual appliance replacement. So if you're replacing a gas stove with an electric stove, you could do that, use that, or replacing gas heating with electric heating. So we've had $4.3 million in loans go out to apartment owners in the last couple of years. $1 million of that has gone to heating and cooling. $2 million has gone to solar. So we've got that program as well.
Thanks. Out of interest, not my question. Not journalist time. What government support, and I think this, maybe Robin, if you could answer this one, what government support would you like to see to help apartments electrify?
I guess reflecting what Neil said, most owners are very focused on the business case and what's it going to cost them and what's it going to do to the rentability and saleability of their unit. And so funding is a critical thing. In the case of our particular building, there's a scale of difficulty. Solar was the easiest, and we accomplished that with nobody having to dig into their pocket for a cent, no loans, and the loan that we took from the sinking fund to finance it is fully repaid from electricity savings in about 4 years. And beyond that, we anticipate about $800,000 saving in electricity costs to the owners. Easy business case, it actually didn't need any government support. EV charging is a notch more difficult, but we've looked at a progressive rollout, we think that it can be largely funded, or a loan can be repaid by a combination of a small charge for every unit, because they all benefit. I think the Urbis study, which is a bit dated, put the increase in value at between $2,500 and $8,000 per unit. So we looked at something like $40 a unit per year, but in a building like ours, that's $10,000 towards servicing a loan. The rest of it user pays with a little surcharge per kilowatt hour provided and per connection made. When it gets to the third most difficult one, which is replacing gas, we don't know where to start. That's a really difficult problem. Every building's different. Some buildings will be easy, but in our case, 250 units using 20,000 litres a day, all with instant gas, hot water heating on the rooftop. To replace that with something that's going to have slower heating capability, you need to create a reservoir, probably a day's supply, which would be 20 tonnes. It can only go in the basement. We have no spare car spaces, so we'd have legal issues to buy back some car spaces, plumbing issues to connect it into the reticulation to the units, electrical issues for the charging, owners' corporation issues, because at the end of the day, owners will still just have the same hot water they've always had. So it's a very hard business case to sell. So as you go up this difficulty scale, concessional funding is really the number one thing I think the government can do. Low interest loans or grants, but the fourth and most difficult challenge, which is kind of on the radar, is that as you electrify everything, the building substation is sooner or later going to prove inadequate. And if gas was difficult, that's even more difficult, because you have to accomplish a significant upgrade, which has network ramifications, without anybody being out of power.
And I wonder, Neil, how you've addressed that with your EVs.
Well, I'd say,
Is
first
that
of all,
reached a point?
we take as a rule of thumb that a close to fully electrified space 2 will probably double its power consumption. So part of the initial study was to check incoming mains, the cubicle, the substation capacity, all that sort of thing. And the answer has been a combination of using all the spare capacity plus load management system. So the computer says, okay, I know the building is supplied with 500 amps per phase. While 300 amps per phase are being used to cook dinner, I'll limit power to the cars to the remainder. And then at 2 a.m. in the morning, when things are different, then charging, it goes at a greater rate. So technology is available to make things better. I mean, if you're right on the limit of your substation capacity, then of course you're looking at big bucks and government support.
Okay, back to government. And I guess this doesn't look at owners, but more the renters, people, or not equitable rollout of electrification, really. How is it being addressed at the moment, and where are you seeing the major pressure points? Because you mentioned there's all these millions of dollars going out in loans. How much of that is for people that really probably need the help?
Yeah, I think the government's got a range of initiatives, and I go back to the strong signalling is the first thing the government's doing to provide certainty. The concessional loans can catch a lot of organisations, so owners, corporations and householders. But beyond that, the government is pretty focused on providing support to those that need it most. So we have rebates in place for concession card holders. So Home Energy Support Program provides $2,500 to concession card holders for electrification upgrades, and we've given away 1,000 of those in the last couple of years. We're also looking after our public housing and our community housing through a $50 million vulnerable household energy support scheme, and we are insulating those properties to bring them in line with new standards, and we're electrifying a lot of them as well. So those sort of programs, I guess, are there to ensure that no one's left behind, and the concessional loans are there for those that can afford to repay. I would say the pressure points, though, as we hear them, and I guess we're keen to hear more, I would say renters, because there is a split incentive. Investing owners potentially don't see the benefits as much as those that live in that home, apartment owners, and so we feel like renters are hard to reach and could be left behind in this. So, and I guess the working poor also. So we design our programs around concession cards and other eligibility criteria at the moment, but we know that there's probably about 25,000 households out there that are going to really struggle to electrify, and some of them are in apartments. And so we just know we need to focus on those. And I guess, the reason we're here tonight, apartments, is got additional challenges to coordinate amongst the large group.
And the other question here was, is it possible to to electrify apartments without subsidising landlords. And I just want to check, who is a landlord here tonight of an apartment? Can we have a sort of a... Okay, yep. And I'd be interested to hear, but how, if you've electrified your apartments, or if that's why you're here too. But on that, is it possible without subsidising landlords to electrify apartments?
I think it's worthy to have social objectives to help those least able to afford, but I do worry a little bit about confusing social objectives and environmental objectives, and to some extent I would favour a clean policy to maximise electrification and then separately look at the social thing rather than try and get them too intertangled.
And can I just say that the person beside you is critical for landlords in this process of electrification.
Thanks, Neil. Here's my lane. Absolutely. When you're looking at subsidy, I think one of the greatest opportunities there is actually in tax depreciation. So making sure that effective amortisation of expenditure, and we're talking about some really heavy expenditure here. We're not talking about a couple of bucks here and there. We're actually talking about big ticket items. And I think when we're looking at how they can be amortised back within the body corporate, within the strata environment, some of you will have the benefit as property investors to be able to recoup some of that cost through tax depreciation, and others won't. As owner-occupiers will basically, you have the benefit of having lower energy costs or a better built environment to live in, but as a property investor, as a taxpayer, that is the leverage that you're actually entitled to bring with you. I'll expand upon that a bit later, I think. So I think that's my observation of that space.
Can I add just one thought? With some of the more difficult challenges like building substations and retiring gas, subsidies in the form of feasibility studies to just map out solutions across a range of different building types are tremendously helpful at this stage, because I suspect most owners' corporations don't have a clue where to start on some of these more difficult challenges.
And Mark, on that, who can depreciation of electrification initiatives benefit in an apartment complex? And some simple examples, I suppose.
Yeah, obviously, everyone who has an income-producing property, whether it's commercial or residential, has the benefit of claiming depreciation. Now, that will be for the structure of the building as well as for the plant and equipment items, these big-ticket electrification assets that are looking at being retrofitted a lot of the time into these buildings. Now, when we're talking about the cost of putting that asset into operation, we're not just talking about the ticket cost of it, of what it costs to bring it off the shelf. We're actually talking about the total installed cost of that asset, which actually goes beyond just what comes in the box. There is the installation, there's the design, there's the consultants that go with it, there's, for EV chargers, there's the cabling, all the way back to the switchboard. All of that then becomes part of that asset. So we don't see that we're not just able to claim just what comes in the box. It's actually the total installed cost. And when we're talking about how that works within a strata environment, we're also looking at a number of unit holders. Each of those unit holders have a percentage ownership of that asset as part of your unit entitlement. And each unit holder's entitlement is an asset in its own right. So the way that we look at that is that if, say, there's 50 units in a complex, there's $45,000 worth of expenditure on a group of assets. Each of those unit holders, if they've got equal entitlements, have actually got a $900 asset, which is then treated under a different set of tax laws than would if they were just buying it as a $40,000 asset themselves. So making sure that we can accelerate the depreciation within the guidelines of the ATO helps us claw back that cost a whole lot quicker than just hoping for the benefits of that asset to bring its own fruit, or for the yield to be improved through the rent which can be brought with it. So I think the way that we look at it is that we need to make sure that we can get that claim back as soon as possible. Plant and equipment items depreciate so much quicker than the built environment of 40 years as an effective life. But when we're looking at residential, they're probably getting a bit of a short straw there where commercial property, small business owners are actually getting 100% write-off on every asset less than $20,000. So their big ticket items are getting written off a whole lot quicker than if a residential property owner does. So I think that's probably an area where there could be a little bit extra brought to the party, especially when you're looking at small business and commercial. They currently have a 20% bonus coming to them as well for their assets under the small business energy incentive. So I think there could be a bit more offered to property investors to bring electrification onto the table a lot quicker.
Mark's just made that interesting. Unbelievable. Thank you, Mark. Like, really, really. And I got keep your receipts as well from that.
If you don't have your receipts, we'll estimate them for you. Okay,
brilliant. Don't even keep your receipts. So thank you. You mentioned the age of the building, but can that maybe Kieran, can the age of the building, can it have a significant impact on the cost of the electrification? We know that older buildings are harder to retrofit. Is there a limit on what can be electrified, or who might be best to answer this?
I'll have a go first if you like. I think just about everything can be electrified at a price, and I think the decision for the owners' corporation is where does the cost benefit start and end, and I guess we would encourage a holistic view, so making a plan and looking at energy efficiency as well as alongside electrification to get a clear picture, because energy efficiency can be often overlooked and it can reduce the cost of electrification. And I guess the other thing to keep in mind is we've got a while until the gas is turning off, and we think that prices for electrification will come down. We're not the only city in the world that's facing this challenge, so it might pay to hold off.
Thank you. Okay,
Can
moving
I
right along. Yes.
Just say very quickly,
yeah.
Age really doesn't weary them. An older building can be just as convertible as a newer one. It's more the sort of DNA of the infrastructure. If it was well built in the first place with spare capacity, then it doesn't matter if it's 100 years old.
Can I just jump in there? We also have the situation though where we've got buildings that possibly shouldn't live for too much longer in terms of building defects and issues, and then there's the whole affordability piece for owners in those buildings. So is it a economic enterprise to embark on, given the realistic or the other costs associated with that building?
Yeah, it's an interesting balance, isn't it? And same with public housing. Government housing. On to solar now, because we're at 8 o'clock and I think I have to let you go home at 8:30, 8:45, 8:30. But there's lots to go. So on to solar. So Will and Robin, how can we better template the approach to shared rooftop solar to make it easier for owners' committees to engage? Will?
Yes, it's... The approach has been quite difficult, and I think the role of especially community groups, what I've found is local councils and a lot of other states has been a key part, which obviously is a little bit different in the ACT, but I think probably where Electrify Canberra can play a really big role, but also consultants in that space. But like speaking on my own personal experience, it is a really big education journey for a lot of these OCs. And a lot of it is coming from the committees then facilitating education with everyone within that building and finding those third parties to facilitate that. So, OC managers play a really big role in that, where they're happy to buy in and they have the time. I think OC managers are very overworked in this industry. I've come across hundreds of them. You do get a very varied scenario, and probably everyone has had that experience. But at least what we've done with Illum, with the rollout of the Solar for Apartments program, and not only the ACT, but also Victoria and kicking off in New South Wales and other states across Australia, is just providing those sources of education. So we, collaborate with the local councils, with community groups in basically what we're doing tonight, really, plays a massive role in bringing everyone's level of knowledge up and facilitating, or I guess catalysing these people in the room, everyone here today, to go back to your own buildings, your own real communities at the end of the day and actually share this knowledge and convey the benefits and how that can be, how it actually impacts landlords, renters and owner-occupiers. So I think continuing what we're doing is really key.
Yeah. Robin?
I just add, within the OCN, we hope to document case studies that will be helpful to other complexes. The big split affecting both solar and EV charging is whether meters are accessible, and things get a whole notch more difficult if they're not accessible. The easy solution is offset solar against the common power, and that's a very simple business case.
Thanks, Robin. Another one for you, Will. Keen to understand this question. I am keen to understand how solar panels can be utilised by apartment blocks, including how to install, how to pay and how to apportion benefits of the systems.
So one of the key things that we do at Illume, so to give a bit more context, we simply manufacture Soul Share as a product, and we technically sell to solar installers within the market. So we really don't mind where that installer ends up being for that end owners corporation. So as part of what our role is, we played a really big role in the Victorian rollout of solar for apartments. We provide a bit of a feasibility assessment, which is quick, really high level feasibility for any apartment building. We do that for ACT sites as well, so more than happy to facilitate. But it's a free sort of service that gives a baseline estimate on what to expect from a budget point of view, from a feasibility point of view, and then whether you would even qualify for funding under the program. So if we look at, say, Victoria, when we help with these sites, there's a whole bunch of criteria, very similar to the ACT scheme. I guess a sister scheme, if you want to put it in that way. But as part of our role, it's basically facilitating those next steps as well. So providing, whether it's then introductions to solar installers that are capable, accredited under the programs. So for ACT, there's the SHS scheme and listed on the Bright Marketplace. So you have to meet a very, broad range of criteria to then have that facilitated. But it is, a large process, and, we try to help out with that process as much as we can, but make sure the right information and education is provided. There's a lot of third-party consultancies that actually help in that. Solar Choice is one of them in the room, that are very capable, but it is making sure the right information is shared to communicate the right message.
How are we going? I see some leg stretching going down here. Do we need to stretch legs? You need to shake it all about? Everybody happy? Give us a whoop. Whoop! That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Will. Now, Daniel, I might ask this because we're on to EVs now, and I know we've heard from Neil, but how can apartments retrofit for EV charging, and what's the first step to take?
The first step, and it's already been mentioned by Neil and Robin, the first step is to undertake a feasibility assessment, because you need to know what you're working with before you can start looking at solutions. And it's, it's preaching to the choir, I know, and it's been said for a few times already for a reason. Every apartment block is different. The needs of the owners, residents and tenants in that apartment block are always going to be different. And so it really is the most important first step, understanding what the expectations and behaviours are of the people who are living in that apartment block when they're planning to buy EVs, what their expectations are around charging capacity, and then looking at the building itself. How much power is coming in from the grid? How much capacity can we use towards EV charging? And only from then on can you start to look at the applications that can be inserted, whether we're connecting to common meters or to individual tenant meters, whether we have a small number of shared chargers or whether we're going for a full backbone future-proof throughout the building. You just can't answer any of these questions in isolation. It has to be a holistic, really broad scope to begin with before you can start narrowing down.
Do you have to get OC tick off to even do a feasibility study, or is there a website you can plug in the general parameters?
Oh, if there were a website to do that, then everyone in this room would have done it already. And I'd also be out of business.
Can I just give a little further definition to what you said? The cost of our feasibility study in 2019 was $11,500.
And I can add to that. If you were to do that tomorrow with Solar Choice or another provider like us, you're looking at around a third of that cost or even less. So you can be talking a couple of $1,000s to have a blueprint, to have a roadmap that then's going to guide everything all the way through to installation.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of studies that can be done at varying prices.
Yeah. I think Neil's done them all, haven't you? You've explored every option. Thanks, Daniel. This question, I am interested in implementing a bank of EV chargers in the building and want to understand the different ways to approach this and how long this process can take.
How long is a piece of string? So a bank of EV chargers could mean a few different things. In a lot of buildings that we consult on, a bank of EV chargers will be in visitor parking spots, which sometimes need to be reapportioned and become EV charging parking spots rather than visitor spots. In that case, it's really, the same questions still apply of whether those chargers are going to be connected back to a common power source or whether they're going to be connected to individual meters, who's going to be using them and who's going to be paying for them. If a bank of chargers is talking about a bank that is across a significant number of parking spots, maybe 50% of the owners in the building are ready to buy their EVs, they want to get in on this project, or potentially, like in the case of Neil's building, every owner is ready to contribute to have the backbone infrastructure that will get them 3/4 of the way there. It is a huge undertaking. It starts with feasibility assessment, it gets narrowed down to one or two feasible or best possible solutions. And then you've got to bring in questions of budget and what can get the vote to actually get across the line, which has to be a big consideration in the building. The reality is once a decision has been made, you can sign a contract with an installer, that project can be done in a couple of weeks. Okay? If you're unlucky, if you've got a really big project, it might be a month. So we're not talking about huge timelines, but it is that decision-making timeline that really can stretch it out, like many things in the strata world.
I'd be keen to hear about this next question as well from Neil or Robin. What are the insurance and fire implications for EV charging, as well as you, Daniel, because you have to consult on this? Maybe Robin?
Look, I can't comment on the insurance for EV charging, but there is a lot of folklore out there that attributes risk to EVs when in fact it's e-bikes and e-scooters and other appliances that are absolutely the high-risk items at the moment. I think there's been something like 2,000 fire brigade call-outs to lithium-ion battery fires, and only 6 of them have related to EVs. So that's probably as much as I can contribute to.
Well, we did the real thing. We did a universal installation. So we spent a lot of owners' money, and when we wanted to be careful, right from an early stage, we spoke with our insurance broker, and he was talking to our insurance company. We wanted to be absolutely certain that if we introduced risk and arguably encouraging electric vehicles, that's possible that you could see that as increasing risk. The insurers might be concerned about that. In our building, I think we're insured for about 60 million. Our building, we wouldn't want to have to self-fund a replacement for that. The insurance companies were very cooperative and helpful. I mean, they wanted reasonable standards to be met, but we had no problems. We also spoke with the fire brigade from an early stage. They were very cautious. More cautious, I would say, than any other authority involved with the installation. They really worried about car fires in our basement. But again, we worked with them. It was always open book. And in the end, they were slightly nervous, but I think that nervous by nature but they accepted everything we did. But I think they very much appreciated the fact that from start to finish we worked with them.
Yeah, my experience in the buildings that we've consulted on at Solar Choice, they mirror what's just been said here in terms of insurance premiums. The only difference is that the total insurable value might have gone up a little bit because of the extra valuable infrastructure. No additional risk that's been factored in for buildings that we worked on. And like it's been said, the fire risk really is negligible. There's a lot of noise about very few instances of any issues. The reality is the only batteries that catch fire are faulty batteries. And that's why, like you said, the chances of a faulty battery on a $2,000 very cheap e-bike or a $200 cheap replacement battery for that e-bike is astronomical compared to a 70 or 80 or 90 or even a $40,000 electric vehicle. We're talking about very different products and the risks are very different between those things.
And dealing with different charging requirements, Tesla versus a Nissan, is that all doable?
All
Do you have to
doable.
get onto Elon Musk and get him?
All doable. At the end of the day, apart from very early legacy electric vehicles, which there are only still a couple moving around the roads, the charging infrastructure is the same, the risks are the same. Unless there's a fault somewhere, it's really a almost zero risk activity charging your vehicle.
We were also very careful to ensure all the fire separation was retained, and the building code requires fire separation. And at the same time, we needed to bore holes for consumer mains and lots of comms cables and things. And so that was a constraint, but it wasn't an obstacle.
How much did you say it cost all up?
It's in two parts. There's a baseline computer, two switchboards, modifications to the main switchboard, and cabling to every parking position. That was 200,000 plus GST, and then on top of that, owners will progressively pay roughly another 200,000 when they want to actually enrol on the system.
200,000 or
2,000? 2.5, maybe 3,000.
Okay.
As they buy wall boxes and have them enrolled in the system.
That might bring up the next topic, which is network capacity. And so I think Daniel, Robin, again, what is the path possibility for upgrading the electrical capacity of an apartment block? I know we've discussed this a little bit, but if you need to upgrade to take all of this load, what's possible? Who wants to take it?
It's a difficult question, Leash. I don't know what the path upgrade is at this stage for our building, and that's where I think a feasibility study into a range of buildings, just how it might be approached, would be tremendously helpful. We have 250 units plus a 60-bed hotel, that's 300 units, with a megawatt capacity. And if you divide that out, if they're all occupied and active, you've got about 3 kilowatts per unit, which is 1.5 power points in use. So it's very, very foreseeable that when we get to a fleet of about 80 vehicles, we will hit the electrical capacity of our building.
What's your plan?
Panic.
I would say that, as I mentioned before, technology is really making more and more systems viable. That's why a feasibility study has got to monitor every hour of the day load usage in the building and then see how much spare capacity there is. And there may not be enough. And it may be that you have to speak to the supply authority and see how they feel about upgrading their half of the system.
Yeah, I'd certainly echo that it's not just the substation in the building, but it's the network ability to feed that with a greater supply.
Ability and willingness. And it is a bit of a case of that where just because there is a need, certainly in the near future, that doesn't mean that that need will be granted by the grid.
What about batteries? Do you want to go? Will?
Yeah, the big question I get asked, and to be honest, a lot of network assessments do happen for a lot of sites when they are looking at solar, EV charging, etc. Whether it's a personal opinion, but we always suggest starting with solar because it benefits every single individual from the get-go, from day one within that building. And then you can utilise that solar in future, of course. But on the battery side of things, I mean, some of the previous work I used to do before my time with Illume was with SA Housing as a commercial project manager. And with those sites, we had every SolarShare installation that was installed by the SA government was coupled with batteries. And that was a really good solution for these sites. And basically, a lot of the apartments were 95% self-sufficient from the grid within these sites. Now, they were 3-story walk-ups with lots of roof space. They had about 2.5 kilowatts of roof space per apartment, which is a lot by our standards. Probably the average site that we work with is around 1.5 kilowatts of solar per apartment, which may seem not much to a lot of people. But when you actually look at, if we look at the 3,000 apartments in the fleet that we have in Australia alone, it is more than sufficient for your daytime usage and a bit of your nighttime. But in saying that, any typical install we have still has around that 50% export rate. And we do see a lot of appetite, or at least the question asked by owners corporations going, well, we get solar now, where do batteries fit into that aspect? And you can make decisions when installing solar. Having a hybrid inverter that's pre-prepared for batteries is really important as well, if desired in the short term. But then looking at the data of that building as well. So we say, you've got full 12 to 24 months of data to then make a decision on how do we actually size that battery accordingly. But it is probably 95% of the conversations I have with OCs do consider that. But it does mean you are a lot more self-sufficient. And then that does go into the demand calculations for any upgrades.
And as Mark just whispered across, he said, vehicle to grid. You've got mobile batteries.
It's a big one. So for the sites, we have several sites where the traditional approach of EVs to the common area isn't taken. So they will connect their EVs behind their own individual apartment loads. So they actually get to use their own shared solar from all their apartment for their EVs. So it is very, I guess the technology hasn't taken off yet because we're waiting for Solar for Apartments programs to push that, which we are seeing. But it does give that flexibility to go at least vehicle to home or vehicle to grid via your own meter, which is a little bit more straightforward in some ways, but a bit more complex from a load management side of things for the site. But that's where technology will come through.
This one is, can you tell us more about load sharing? Who wants to take that one? It just says, who is this question from? Move on. Out it goes. Get it. Hot water. Hot water. Yep. So good. Okay, because hot water is the big issue for a lot of apartments, as we heard, whether it's a big giant reticulated unit that needs to take up millions of car parks. How do you convert a centralised gas hot water to electric? What are the options? What are the most cost-effective options?
Right. Well, I suppose the
you want to just hold your
first thing we need is a location. We need the space, somewhere to put it. I think Robin mentioned before in your scenario, 20,000 litres of stored water you required, which is 20 tonnes. A roof space where you've got a manifold of gas boilers. Maybe weighs a few hundred kilos. To replace that with 20 tonne, the buildings just aren't designed for it. So, yeah, first thing we need is a location. And not every building's going to be able to take that sort of stored capacity. So with, townhouses or medium density type buildings, it's probably possible. Definitely in townhouses. Unit complexes that might only require 3,000 or 4,000 litres of stored water, it's possible. But the big ones, I'm not sure. Once we've got a location, then we can look at how to pipe it in. I think the first place to start is probably with a hydraulic consultant to design something to suit that building, because there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all option.
Are we there with the technology?
The heat pump technology is there. The recovery rate is still, an issue with heat pumps, with relying on ambient air temperature and whatnot. So these reticulated systems will still require a booster or buffer tank working on an electric element, just to maintain that temperature within the ring main. Yeah, so it's there, but we're still going to need electric elements to maintain the heat in the system.
Yeah, well, if you get cold showers in an apartment block, I reckon, Neil, you'll be the first to hear about it.
I think there's also some issues around the metering. Like, currently I think you guys might have more
if
option
we
on
could
that.
explore that, because I think that's
I think with the gas boilers, correct me if I'm wrong, but Gemini own the meters and carry out the.
I can
reading.
probably help with this one a little bit. So we look at this all the time. So at the moment, Gemini own the network. Zinfra maintain the network on behalf of Gemini, and Evo Energy has some involvement at some level in that network arrangement. Now, the problem with gas to electric hot water changeovers as well is investor owners, stumping up the cash to actually fund the infrastructure changeover is one issue. And the ability to actually even install that infrastructure is another. But then when you say to the investor owner, by the way, you're going to be paying permanently to supply your tenants with hot water. Now that long form argument becomes very, very difficult. When we look at the need to change over from the meeting arrangements that we have today, we really do need someone like the Australian Energy Regulator to step in and say, hey, Owners Corporation, you can buy these meters, you can read them yourself. Provide access to the proprietary systems that Gemini are using to store this data, so that the owners corporations aren't having to go through and do additional infrastructure upgrades and can buy that at a fair market rate. And I think there's only one entity that can force that to happen is the government, and I think that is something that will sensibly happen down the line as these things start to happen.
If I could just reinforce that slightly, the arrangement that many buildings have is that each unit has to have a retail gas account with a daily supply charge. In the case of our building, those daily supply charges amount to something like 70 to 80,000 per year. And if you could take over the meters and save that 70 to 80,000, that services a big loan to deal with the rest of it.
That's a lot of feasibility studies. Yeah, that's really interesting. Will the government get on board with that, Kieran?
Sure.
You can take it on notice, but I'll be back in touch tomorrow. Okay, we'll take it on notice. It's like the renters in the room. Silence. A couple more on hot water, David. Could owners install individual heat pumps in their own apartments?
So, yes, maybe not with the high density housing, but the low to medium definitely. From a plumbing perspective, if there is a location to put the hot water and the pipework accessible and whatnot, yeah, sure, we can achieve it. Susan mentioned before about the legalities around putting the heat pump compressor on common property, which I suppose if it's all within the boundaries of the apartment, yes, but heat pumps, we need to put the compressor outside. So yes and no, it's possible, but not for every apartment.
Because Susan, I know noise is an issue with a lot of this technology, and I know you can get silent heat pumps. Do you get a lot of complaints from people about the noise?
Yeah, I haven't seen so many complaints about noise related to heat pumps, but I have certainly floating floors and other things. But any alterations to structures within a unit potentially could cause a breach of a rule that's causing a nuisance to another unit owner. So these are all considerations why many of these matters have to go to the Owners Corporation or the Executive Committee for consideration, because what one person may want to do may have a negative impact on another.
Yeah. David, do you get lots of people just coming to you trying to do it on the sly and hoping that no one will notice that they've got...
No, not often. Not often.
But, good.
One other thing too that I will probably mention on with the reticulated systems on older buildings, if we are upgrading those older gas boilers to heat pumps, there are some compliance issues around upgrading the tempering valves to bring the temperature to 50 degrees within the owner's building. I faced this once before. So yeah, sure, we might be able to upgrade the unit, in common areas or whatnot, but then the inside the unit we need to reduce the temperature back to 50. So there could be work in older buildings also inside the apartment to achieve it.
I've got so many more questions, and I no doubt you have so many more questions. But we're at, let me have a look. Ooh, 8:29, time for the Slido questions. Before we do, can we just have a big round of applause for this fabulous panel? And extraordinary questions. If I was still on radio, I'd be sourcing my questions every morning on an app. But thank you so much. Now, I think we've got the Slido questions as written and voted the best by you.
Okay, so some of the questions have been answered, but the most popular one by far was about gas. Can we hear more from Tom about replacing gas, cooking, heating and hot water? You've already done the hot water part. How about the other two parts?
Well, from a gas fitter's point of view, replacing a cooktop just means us coming in and capping off the gas supply. We don't install the induction cooktop. So, yeah, we'd be in and out to cap off the supply. So that would be easy from us. You'd need to speak to an electrician about running the circuit or upgrading the circuit or whatever you need to do to install an induction cooktop. So cooktop's an easy one for us.
David, do you feel you're doing yourself out of a job here though? Like, I'm serious. Are you retraining? Are you worried? Can you just hold the microphone up? So yeah.
No, I'm not worried. I think there's plenty of work still within the plumbing industry for us all. Especially if we're going to end up putting in heat pumps on everybody's apartments and whatnot.
Are there disconnection fees when you turn off the gas?
With the network so I think as far as I know, there are disconnection fees if you're going to take it back to the main. I'm not sure. I think you can close your account and leave your meter there, but to actually abolish the service and take it back to the main, there are fees involved for that. I'm not sure, but I think that might be something that will be coming in as mandated eventually.
Yeah, and I think probably there's people with experience here who've capped it at the meter. Is there a sort of a general cost I've heard? We've got the Minister Rattenbury, thank you.
The Australian Energy Regulator determines that cost at a national level. It's $800 odd for an abolishment and about $150 for a capping. 180, thank you.
That's across the country?
That's the ACT price. It's pretty similar across the country.
And if you've got a house, that's fine. But if you've got an apartment where they don't actually do anything, why are we being charged $800?
I think in real life you just close your account, don't cap it off, and everyone walks past and you don't pay it.
Don't abolish. No abolishment.
If you're in an apartment with a hot water system that's gas enabled, you're still going to get charged daily fees.
But the capping.
So you can cap your thing in the oven or your cooktop, but you still got a hot water system. You're still going to get the daily charge, unless you get rid of the whole gas system. Unless you get rid of the whole gas system, you're still going to get the daily charge, and that's the killer for all apartment owners.
Anyone like to comment on that? At the mains.
No, you don't have a sub-meter for your hot water. The gas heaters light up and give everybody hot water, and then they measure how much water you use, hot water you use.
A hot water meter.
And that is your percentage of the gas bill that you pay. That's really embedded.
See, this is the complications of every different apartment, isn't it? And I think that's why we had to have 9 panellists, and we could have had another 9 to cover so many more questions. There's another question from Slido. I know lots of gas cooking and heating and hot water.
So the second most popular question is one for the politicians, I suppose. What is the ACT government doing to pressure developers to build to a higher standard, given the issues in buildings still in planning or recently finished?
That's not my area. There is work underway. I don't know if Minister wants to say anything on that.
Would you like to say something, Minister? Because the transition period is over now, isn't it? Every new apartment.
Yeah,
has
so
to-
from last December, no new apartment buildings can be built with gas connections. There's a transition period for ones that are already in design or approved, but there should be no new ones coming through. I think that's the core of the question, isn't it?
Yes.
How are you? Have there any exemptions been made for?
Not yet. They have to be signed off by the minister. And none have come across my desk.
Okay, I'm just going to refresh, make sure I get the most popular questions. How do we encourage apartment complexes to install solar when government programs have more requirements and provide less funding to apartment grant programs?
I wouldn't agree with that. We've got, so the programs that we have, like the Sustainable Household Scheme that's broad, has eligibility criteria that's more generous for apartments than it is for standalone houses. 92% of houses, of apartments are eligible for that, where it's only around 60% of houses. And then we've got these additional programs like solar for apartments, specifically aimed at apartments. So I think we are doing a lot, and certainly there's more to come. So we've talked a bit about making a plan, and certainly that's on the government's mind, and we've been advising governments to think about putting together a concierge service so that, to help apartments and owners, corporations to make that plan and to provide sort of technical support, and also to make sure that what we learn is shared. I think we are pretty focused on the apartment sector, and we're doing just as much there.
Can I add to that? I think the existence of case studies is a really big thing, and personally, with a lot of the governments that we've worked with the Solar for Apartments program, they have direct examples that they've utilised in, say, Department of Housing type assets, and a lot of that case studies will come through consultants and any sort of community group. I think the other thing to consider is what I've found in more so other states is the program isn't designed for every single apartment. We find the programs are designed for the concentration of apartments, which is really at the end of the day that 5 to 30 apartments in this space. And I think it's really important that we come at it at a really proactive manner and provide guidance on, we have a lot of apartment buildings in Victoria, for example, and they're like, yep, we don't qualify, we're 51 apartments. We don't meet the under 50 apartment threshold. But it's, advising and saying, we really want to be a part of this. Can we be a part of this for future rounds? At the end of the day, we want, these programs to be here for the mainstay. And I guess it needs a collaborative environment from everyone that is in an OC, is an OC manager, etc. in this space. So I think it's just the right approach to take to guide it for future is really important to facilitate government to actually, make a really big impact.
Thanks, and thanks for those great Slido questions. Excellent. I think we're almost ready to wrap up, but before we do, we've got the expertise here. Can I just get you to share the one thing that you would like to see happen to get electrification of apartments on the table faster, more affordable, and maybe a nugget of gold that each of these people can go away with? Do you want to start, Mark? Yeah.
I'd like to see a bit more equity in the depreciation benefits that are available to residential property owners as well as the small business operators. So essentially, we're all there trying to build an environment in this housing affordability and the cost of living environment, everything we can do to actually reduce the living costs, everything we can do to improve our environment that we all inhabit. Well, it doesn't cost a lot to do a little bit better.
I'd love to see OCs all across the country, not just the progressive ones or the ones that have one person who's already got an EV. everyone thinking about this as a problem that needs to be tackled soon, because that's actually going to start changing consumer behaviour as well. We have lots of people living in apartment buildings across Australia whose decision making around vehicles is actually guided by what they have access to, and this is a time when we can start to flip that around and influence behaviour as well.
Many things I could say on this side of things. I mean, probably two key things. I guess the collaboration of community with these buildings is really key. You know, I guess the neighbourly experiences that we've seen come through with a lot of OCs has been really, really impactful. You know, renters are the ones that have never received these benefits really in reality. We look at Victoria, 2,500 renters in their program were reached in their entire solar homes program. And in the current program they've got out at the moment, they've got about 2,500 renters already pre-approved. So in about a 3-month period, they've doubled what they've done in however many years they've been in existence, I think 5 or 6 or more. But I think just exploring the